Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
It is Sunday, March 1st, 2026. And I have to say, looking at the calendar today, it really feels like the future arrived a lot faster than any of us expected.
It definitely snuck up on us.
It did. And usually when we sit down to do this, we're doing a post-mortem on the week that just passed.
Yeah.
We're looking at the headlines you've already seen on your feeds and maybe adding a little bit of color.
Right, the standard recap.
Exactly. But today is different.
It is very different.
Yeah.
Today isn't about looking back at the news at all. It's really about looking forward at the underlying mechanics.
Yeah, we are completely ignoring the social media feeds today. Instead, we're looking at a stack of documents that, quite frankly, is a little intimidating.
It's a heavy stack.
Very heavy. We've got Manal Mehta's market intelligence reports, which are usually incredibly dense on their own. We've got recovered intel feeds regarding Pentagon contracting.
Yeah.
We've got forensic accounting reports from the ski industry of all places.
Which is fascinating.
And we have some very dense peer-reviewed scientific journals on neurodegeneration.
It's an eclectic mix, to say the least. But that's exactly the point of what we do here. We aren't interested in the mainstream narrative, the simple stories that get packaged for the morning news. We are hunting for what we call the triangulated reality.
Triangulated reality. I love that concept. It almost sounds like we're navigating a ship.
In a way, we are navigating, because the truth of the world right now, especially in 2026, isn't found in a single vertical. You can't just look at tech or just look at finance.
Right.
The reality is found where those verticals collide. It's where a power grid failure in Virginia intersects with a railroad stock in Omaha, or where a biological breakthrough in an Alzheimer's lab intersects with a military contract in Washington.
And when you lay all these completely disparate sources out on the table in front of you, a theme really starts to emerge. And it's not a very comfortable theme, is it?
No, it's not comfortable at all. The two words that kept jumping out at me as I went through this stack for today were fragility and authenticity.
Let's unpack that. Fragility first.
Right. So on one hand, the massive, complex systems we all rely on, the power grid, the global supply chains, the corporate heavyweights, they are revealing these hidden fragilities. They are much brittler than they appear on the surface.
And on the other hand, the authenticity piece.
On the other hand, because these massive systems feel so fake and so fragile to the average person, there's this massive human scramble for something real.
Something tangible.
Exactly, something authentic. Whether that's in the coffee you drink, the town you live in, or even how we fundamentally treat disease.
So we have a world that is breaking down mechanically in a world that is trying to break through culturally. We have a ton of ground to cover for you today. We're going to talk about why the U.S. grid is physically rejecting AI data centers.
We're going to talk about why Berkshire Hathaway is sitting on a mountain of cash that's literally bigger than the GDP of Finland.
We're going to discuss a literal coup in a ski town in Colorado.
And we're going to explain why the cure for Alzheimer's might have absolutely nothing to do with your brain.
But let's start with the electricity, the lifeblood of this entire AI revolution.
Right, the AI power paradox.
Now, if you listen to the standard narrative, if you turn on the financial channels, the story they give you is very simple. AI models are getting bigger, they need more juice, we are running out of electricity, and therefore we are keeping coal plants online. It's framed as a basic supply and demand story.
And that is the clean, easy version for TV. We need more power, so we just burn more stuff.
Yeah.
But Manal Mehta's intelligence report paints a much, much more alarming picture.
How so?
The problem isn't just that we don't have enough power, it's that the physical grid cannot handle the specific behavior of these new data centers.
Okay, let's break that down, because I think of the grid as just a giant pool of energy. You pour electricity in, you take it out. How does a data center break a pool?
To understand that, you have to look at Northern Virginia. This is the data center capital of the world. Something like 70% of all global internet traffic flows through these specific servers.
Wow, 70%.
Yeah, it's a massive concentration. And the Intel report describes a phenomenon happening there that utility operators are absolutely terrified of. They refer to it internally as the drop.
The drop. It sounds like a horror movie.
It acts like one for the grid engineers. So here's the actual mechanics of it. These modern AI data centers are incredibly sensitive. They are packed with millions and millions of dollars of advanced GPUs.
Right, the chips running all the AI models.
Exactly. Now, if there is a minor disruption on the power line, and we are talking about a voltage flicker that lasts for just a few milliseconds, maybe it's caused by a lightning strike 10 miles away, or a tree branch brushing a wire.
Something totally normal.
Completely normal. A normal factory would just keep humming along. A light bulb in your house wouldn't even blink.
But a server farm?
A server farm is programmed for extreme self-preservation. When those sensors detect that tiny irregularity, they don't write it out. They instantly, and I mean simultaneously, disconnect from the main grid to switch over to their own backup generators.
Okay, so they essentially unplug themselves. But in my mind, that sounds like it should actually help the grid. If the demand goes to zero, the load lightens, right? That should be a relief.
That is highly intuitive, but it's completely wrong because of the physics involved. The electrical grid actually works on inertia.
Inertia, okay.
Think of it like a giant, incredibly heavy flywheel that is spinning constantly. The
Mhm.
power plants, the coal, the nuclear, the gas, they are pushing the wheel to keep it going. And the cities, the homes, the factories, they are acting as the friction, the load that slows it down.
Right, so the system stays at a constant speed.
Exactly. In the US, it stays at exactly 60 hertz. It's a delicate balance of pushing and dragging.
Okay, I'm with you. Balance.
Now imagine you're a power plant pushing that heavy flywheel with all your might, anticipating a massive amount of friction from a gigawatt data center, and suddenly, in a single millisecond, all of that friction vanishes.
Oh, wow. The wheel spins out of control.
Exactly. You get a massive voltage spike. The frequency goes completely haywire. This is the drop. When gigawatts of demand vanish in an instant, it sends a violent shockwave back through the transmission lines.
What does that actually do to the infrastructure?
It can physically blow out transformers. It can trip safety relays at the power plants themselves, which causes the power plants to shut down to protect themselves.
So by trying to save their own precious servers, these data centers are risking blowing up the entire grid for everyone else.
Precisely. It creates extreme volatility. And our grid, which was built over the last century for slow, predictable changes, like people turning on their lights when the sun sets, is absolutely not built for massive industrial loads that behave like skittish animals.
It's the fragility we talked about. It's not just a matter of saying we need more coal. It's that the physical machine of the grid is breaking under the specific type of load.
And that leads directly into the political side of this report. You've probably seen the headlines about the Trump administration rolling back emission standards recently.
Yeah, the mainstream narrative is just that it's a pro-fossil fuel stance.
Right. But the recovered intel we have suggests it's actually much more calculated than that. In the documents, they are officially calling it a matter of national strategic interest.
Which is Washington code for we cannot let China win.
Correct. The administration is looking at this fragile grid, and they are looking at the global AI arms race. And they are saying, look, if the grid goes down, or if we can't spin up these new data centers because of environmental reviews, we lose the 21st century.
So the climate goals get pushed aside.
Essentially, yes. Environmental regulations, carbon targets, in these intel briefings, those are viewed as peacetime luxuries. The posture is that we are effectively in a wartime economy right now regarding AI compute.
So the EPA is being told to stand down because the bots need to eat.
That is the pragmatic reality of the situation. But here's where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. If you're trying to figure out what this actually means for the broader economy, the alpha, the investment insight here, isn't what you might assume.
It's not just buying coal stocks.
No, absolutely not. Coal is still fundamentally a dying industry in the long run. Nobody is out there financing brand new coal mines. What we are seeing is just a temporary extension of life for existing plants. The smart money in these intelligence reports is looking at the second order effect.
Okay, walk me through that trade. What's the second order effect?
Well, if the Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA, is reversing its prior decisions to close old coal plants, and if places like Virginia are demanding more baseline power instantly, that coal has to physically move from the earth to the furnace. It doesn't teleport.
Right, it goes on a train.
It goes on a train. The intelligence specifically highlights railroad operators here, companies like BNSF. Think about it. You cannot build a new pipeline or a new high-voltage transmission line in under a decade in this country. The permitting alone takes forever.
But you can schedule more trains tomorrow.
Exactly. The grid bottleneck directly becomes a logistics boom. The railroads are the immediate beneficiaries of this grid instability. They are the flexible arteries that are going to keep these zombie coal plants alive through the AI crunch.
And remind me, who owns BNSF Railroad?
That would be Berkshire Hathaway.
Which brings us perfectly to the sleeping giant in Omaha.
It really does.
And this is the second major piece of our stack today. We have Greg Abel's first letter as the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett, the Oracle, has finally passed the torch. And the number that everyone in the financial press is staring at right now is $373.1 billion.
It is a staggering, almost incomprehensible amount of cash just sitting there on the balance sheet.
To put that in perspective for you, that cash pile is bigger than the market cap of almost every single company in the S&P 500. And the market's reaction, at least the mainstream narrative, seems to be extreme frustration. I'm reading these analyst notes, and they're saying things like, Greg Abel is timid. They're saying, why isn't he buying anything? Why isn't he doing massive share buybacks? Is he just paralyzed by Buffett's shadow?
And that is such a superficial take. The market loves action. Wall Street loves deal-making because deals generate fees. When they see a pile of cash that large that isn't moving, they automatically assume the person in charge doesn't know what to do with it. But the expert analysis in our Intel stack calls this the dry powder fallacy.
The dry powder fallacy. So you're saying this isn't paralysis at all. This is a deliberate strategy.
It is the ultimate strategy. You have to try and look at the world through Greg Abel's eyes right now. He isn't looking at the daily stock ticker. He's looking at the macro threat environment. And the recovered Intel feeds we have paint a picture of the next 12 to 24 months that is, frankly, incredibly volatile.
What are the specific threats he's seeing that the rest of the euphoric market is just ignoring?
The reports outline two main pillars of catastrophic risk. The first one is geopolitical. We have steadily escalating tensions in the Middle East. And the intel specifically mentions the Strait of Hormuz.
The major oil choke points.
A huge percentage of the world's oil flows through that narrow strait. If that gets blocked, or if there is a significant military disruption there, oil prices don't just go up by $10, they double, they triple.
And that ripples through everything.
It is an immediate, devastating global inflation shock. It crashes the consumer economy practically overnight.
And the second pillar of risk.
The technological shock. We just talked about AI power demands, but there's also the sheer AI software disruption. The intelligence suggests that AI agents are about to, and I'm quoting the report here, eat for breakfast the established software giants.
Which companies are we talking about specifically?
The legacy enterprise software guys. Salesforce, IBM, the big B2B players that have dominated for 20 years. The general market currently thinks these companies are safe dividend plays. Berkshire's analysts seem to think they are walking dead.
Because of AI replacement.
Right. If AI agents can truly replace human white-collar workers, nobody needs to buy a $50 a month seat license for Salesforce anymore. The revenue models collapse.
So Abel is looking at the S&P 500, which is currently sitting at all-time highs, and he sees a massive tech bubble on one side and a geopolitical minefield on the other.
Exactly. He looks at the current valuations of these companies and says, there is absolutely zero margin of safety here. The fact that Berkshire hasn't bought back its own shares for 6 consecutive quarters now, that is the loudest signal possible.
Because it means they don't even think their own stock is a good deal at these prices.
Exactly. That is sobering. When the greatest value investing firm in history says, we aren't buying anything, not even ourselves, you should probably stop and think about what they know that you don't.
They're acting like predators,
Right.
essentially.
That sounds harsh, but it's the absolute truth of elite capital allocation. They are apex predators, waiting for the dislocation. They are waiting for the exact moment when the fragility we talked about earlier finally snaps.
When the grid breaks, or the oil stops flowing, or the software bubble bursts.
Yes. That is when cash is king. So while everyone else is panicked, getting margin called and selling their prime assets for pennies on the dollar just to stay afloat, Abel will be the one stepping into the room with $373 billion in literal cash to buy the best American companies at a massive discount.
It's not timidity. It's extreme discipline. He is building a war chest for a war he believes is entirely inevitable.
It really reframes the whole boring image of Berkshire Hathaway, doesn't it? It makes them look less like a sleepy insurance conglomerate and more like a tightly coiled spring.
A coiled spring made of $1/3 trillion.
Exactly.
So we've established that the big macro systems, the grid, the stock market, are incredibly fragile right now, and the really big players are hunkering down. But this brings us to the authenticity side of our theme today. Because while the corporate giants are playing defense, regular people are starting to actively revolt against the fake.
This is honestly my favorite part of the stack today because it's cultural. It's about the vibe shift. There is this visceral, undeniable rejection of the polished, corporate sanitized experience happening right now.
We see this clearly in the coffee wars. The stack highlights a really interesting battle between Starbucks and Dutch Bros. Now, to me, coffee is just coffee. You go, you get caffeine, you leave. But apparently it's much deeper than that.
It is definitely not just coffee. Think about Starbucks. They spent decades building this concept of the third place. It was supposed to be your home, your work, and then Starbucks.
Right, the nice jazz music playing, the smell of roasted beans, the comfortable leather chairs. You hang out there.
And what is it now?
Now, it's basically a mobile order fulfillment center. You walk in, it's chaotic, there's a pile of cups, people are shouting names. You grab a drink that was made 3 minutes ago and has been sitting on a counter, and you leave.
It's highly efficient, but it's completely soulless. It's purely transactional.
And Dutch Bros is capitalizing on that exact lack of soul.
Dutch Bros is winning by actively choosing not to be a traditional coffee shop. If you look at the forensic data in the report, 90% of their sales right now are cold drinks.
90%. That's
Yep.
wild for a coffee chain.
Yes, because they aren't really selling traditional cappuccinos or flat whites to Gen Z. They are selling these high-sugar, incredibly colorful, highly customizable energy drinks. They literally call them Rebel energy drinks.
Rebel. Again, the branding is not exactly subtle.
It's not subtle at all. But look at the actual physical experience of going there. It's loud music. It's these broistas who are specifically trained to ask you about your day and actually maintain eye contact and mean it. It feels a little chaotic, yes, but it feels alive. It feels young and real.
It's the anti-corporate corporation.
Exactly. And the massive incumbents. You look at McDonald's launching their Cosmix spin-off brand, or Starbucks trying desperately to introduce energy refreshers. They're trying to copy the literal liquid in the cup, but they completely lack the ability to copy the authenticity of the culture.
You can't put cool in a standard operating procedure manual.
It's impossible. It's like watching a politician try to do a TikTok dance. It just highlights how unbelievably stiff and out of touch they are.
And this authenticity premium, this massive value that regular people are suddenly placing on the real and the unique,
Yeah.
it is playing out in a much, much higher stakes game in Telluride, Colorado.
Oh, Skigate.
Yeah.
The story is absolutely wild.
I spent an hour last night just reading the forensic timeline on this one document. It genuinely reads like a season of Succession, but set in a ski lift line.
It really does. So let's set the stage for you. You have Telluride. It's one of the absolute crown jewels of American skiing. Beautiful, rugged, very difficult terrain, very isolated. And the resort itself is owned by a man named Chuck Horning.
And Chuck is. Well, he's a character.
To say the least. He's a wealthy California real estate mogul, but he runs this multi-million-dollar resort like it's his personal passion project. He openly hates traditional marketing. He famously, on the record, calls it bullshit.
He doesn't want to overgroom the ski runs either.
Right. He wants the mountain to be raw. He wants it to be a pure skiing experience, not a theme park.
And the local political establishment absolutely hated this approach.
The mainstream narrative in the town, driven by the very wealthy second homeowners and the local politicians, they wanted Telluride to be the next Vail. They wanted the heated sidewalks, the massive crowds, the luxury boutiques, and the sky-high ticket prices. They desperately wanted the corporate Disneyland for skiers model because it boosts property values.
Vail Resorts is effectively the villain in this specific narrative.
Right.
The Borg of the ski industry, just assimilating mountains.
Right. Vail is the aggregator. They buy independent resorts, they homogenize them, they slap them on the Epic Pass, and they ruthlessly maximize the revenue per square foot. And the local officials in Telluride decided that Chuck Horning was standing in the way of that inevitable progress. So the intel reveals they actually staged a coup.
A literal coup. In a ski town.
A soft coup, but a very aggressive one. The mayor and the mayor pro tem of Mountain Village secretly engaged outside private investors without telling anyone, and they ambushed Horning with an unsolicited buyout offer of $127.5 million. But it wasn't just a friendly, hey, do you want to sell your mountain?
There was a distinct threat attached to the offer.
Implicitly, yes. The private emails that were recovered in this report, which, by the way, led to their immediate resignations when they leaked, showed they were actively discussing how to use their municipal regulatory power to squeeze him out.
Like mafia tactics.
Literally. The emails basically said, if you don't sell to our guys, we will make your life an absolute living hell with zoning restrictions, water rights blockages, and targeted taxes.
That is straight up corruption. The report actually called it Little Chicago.
It is. But here is the amazing punchline. Horning essentially told them to get lost. He flat out refused to sell. And when the whole story broke in the local papers, the skiers, the actual paying customers, completely sided with Horning.
Why? Why side with a billionaire?
Because even though he's an eccentric, difficult billionaire, he is an independent, eccentric billionaire. He isn't a faceless private equity firm from New York. He isn't a publicly traded aggregator. He represents the weird, authentic Telluride that people actually love.
It's the exact same as the Dutch Bros effect. People would rather deal with a quirky, occasionally frustrating human being than a polished, predatory corporate algorithm.
Exactly. And this leads to a very specific actionable investment thesis found in the analyst report. They say you should go long the irreplaceable assets, meaning invest in the independent resorts and brands that actually have a soul and a loyal following, and you short the bland aggregators like Vail.
But is that short case just based on vibes, or is there hard financial data backing that up?
There is extremely hard data, and it goes back to geopolitics again. These massive corporate aggregators rely heavily on international tourism to fill their mega hotels and buy their expensive passes, specifically Chinese tourists.
And those tourists aren't coming anymore.
We have a stark data point from Japan in the stack. After a recent diplomatic spat with China, Chinese tourism to Japan dropped by 61% almost instantly. With the current escalating tensions between Washington and Beijing, the likelihood of wealthy Chinese skiers flocking to Vail or Whistler this winter is plummeting.
So the corporate model is getting squeezed on the macro level by geopolitics, and the independent model is protected on the micro level by intense brand loyalty.
That's the triangulated reality right there. The big guys are horribly exposed. The little guys, if they're genuinely authentic, are incredibly resilient.
This theme of having to pick sides leads us directly into our next segment. We talked about the ski wars. Now let's pivot to the actual wars, or at least the technology driving modern warfare. Because the Pentagon has been making some moves in AI contracting that are going to fundamentally reshape Silicon Valley.
This is a critical development. For the last 2 or 3 years, the biggest, loudest debate in the AI industry has been safety versus speed. Do we build strict guardrails, or do we build weapons? The Pentagon essentially just ended that debate.
They made a definitive choice.
They did. The recovered intel confirms that the U.S. government has effectively severed its working relationship with Anthropic.
Now, Anthropic is generally viewed as the good guy in the tech narrative, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones constantly talking about constitutional AI. They're the ones who promise not to let their AI do anything malicious or dangerous.
Right. They're the absolute safety-first company. They wanted strict, programmatic limitations on how their models could be used by clients. No lethal autonomous weapons, no aggressive or warrantless surveillance. They wanted to maintain the absolute moral high ground.
And the Pentagon looked at that and said,
The Pentagon said, we need to win a war. So they moved the massive defense contract over to the OpenAI and Microsoft partnership.
so the government is explicitly prioritizing raw capability and compliance over ethical safety protocols.
They are prioritizing what the report calls patriotic AI. The analysis suggests we are rapidly entering a new phase where these tech companies have to make a hard choice. You can't just be a neutral platform anymore. You are either a designated national asset, meaning you will work on defense, you will work on lethality, you will integrate with the intelligence community, or you are considered a national security risk.
That is a very harsh ultimatum for these founders.
It is. But look at the state of the world. If you firmly believe, as the current administration does, that artificial intelligence is the single deciding factor in future national sovereignty, you absolutely cannot have your primary software provider suddenly telling you, I'm sorry, I can't analyze those satellite photos. It violates my internal constitution.
So what does this mean for the industry as a whole?
It means the entire safetiest camp in Silicon Valley is going to lose their primary source of limitless funding. The defense tech sector, on the other hand, is going to explode. We are moving away from theoretical university ethics debates into practical, lethal deployment. And the companies that willingly align themselves with the government war chest like Microsoft are going to win all the massive federal spend.
It's essentially a return to the Cold War military-industrial complex, but built with software instead of steel.
Precisely. And speaking of software, there is another absolute bloodbath happening right now in the corporate tech world. We touched on this briefly earlier. The death of the SaaS business model, software as a service.
This is the Amazon story from the Intel stack.
The Amazon layoffs. Now, obviously, massive companies fire people all the time. That isn't necessarily news. But Amazon laid off their entire technical writing teams with a very specific, terrifying internal memo. They didn't say, we don't need documentation anymore. They said, AI will now write the documentation.
That is a massive watershed moment.
It is the absolute canary in the coal mine. Technical writing is a highly skilled, complex job. It requires deeply understanding intricate code and then explaining it clearly to human engineers. Amazon, which is arguably the most data-driven, ruthlessly efficiency-obsessed company on Earth, decided that an LLM is good enough to completely replace those highly paid humans right now, not in a 5-year projection. Today.
So if Amazon has done the math and is doing it, every other Fortune 500 company is going to follow suit immediately.
Everyone. And here's the direct short trade the analyst points out. Think about legacy companies like Salesforce or ServiceNow or Workday. How do they actually make their money?
They charge per user, per seat license.
Exactly. They sell a recurring license for every single human butt in a desk seat. If Amazon fires 100 technical writers, that is 100 fewer licenses they buy from Microsoft or Slack or Salesforce every single month.
Because the AI agent doing the writing doesn't need a Slack account.
The AI interacts directly via API. It costs fractions of a penny. The entire revenue model of the last 15 years of Silicon Valley, the whole SaaS boom, is completely built on the foundational assumption of a stable or growing human white-collar workforce. If AI causes that workforce to severely contract, the SaaS bubble bursts violently.
That is a terrifying domino effect. The stock market is broadly bidding up all AI-adjacent stocks right now, but they aren't realizing that AI literally kills the primary customers of the legacy software stocks.
It's the snake eating its own tail in real time.
Wow. Okay, before we move to the science section, which is actually kind of hopeful, thankfully, I want to touch on one more business story from the stack. Netflix.
Yes. The one media company that actually seems to know exactly what it's doing.
Netflix officially walked away from buying Warner Bros. Discovery. The entire media landscape right now is desperately trying to consolidate Paramount, Warner, Disney. Everyone is trying to merge just to survive the streaming wars. And Netflix looked at a major acquisition and just said, no thanks.
It connects perfectly back to our dual theme of authenticity and discipline. The legacy media giants are absolutely drowning in debt. The combined entity of a theoretical Warner and Paramount merger would have had something like $90 billion in toxic debt. They are incredibly messy. They have massive conflicting corporate cultures.
So Netflix looked at that sprawling mess and pulled a Greg Abel.
They absolutely did. They realized their primary competitive advantage is singular focus. They don't need to buy legacy cable networks that are bleeding viewers. They don't need decaying linear TV infrastructure. They are lean, they are highly profitable, and they are purely digital. Why on earth would they inherit someone else's stage 4 cancer?
So they happily collect a massive breakup fee and just keep moving forward organically.
It's a brilliant alpha move. You just sit back and let the slow dinosaurs fight each other to the death in the tar pit while the nimble mammal runs away with all the actual food.
Okay, let's get completely into the weeds for a minute. We promised the listeners some hidden mechanics today. We found a bizarre legal loophole in the Intel stack that is apparently saving multinational companies billions of dollars, and it's about to suddenly disappear. It's called the first sale rule.
This is pure, unadulterated global trade plumbing. It sounds boring on the surface until you realize just how much actual money is involved here.
Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Or
better yet, explain it like I'm a retail importer.
Okay, you're an importer. You want to buy a container of leather sofas from a factory in China to sell in the U.S. The factory makes the sofa for $100, but you don't actually buy it directly from the factory. You buy it from a trading middleman based in Hong Kong.
Okay, pretty standard supply chain stuff.
Right. The middleman buys it from the factory for $100, marks it up for his profit, and sells it to you for $150. You pay him $150.
So when I bring that sofa into the port in Los Angeles, I pay U.S. customs tariffs on the $150.
Yeah.
Because that's what I paid.
You absolutely should. That is the true transaction value. But thanks to a very obscure legal court case from the 1980s called First Sale, you are legally allowed to tell U.S. Customs, hey, the very first sale in this chain was only $100 between the factory and the middleman. I want to calculate my import taxes based on that lower number.
Wait, really? So I can completely ignore the actual price I paid to the vendor?
Legally, yes. You can completely decouple your tariff value from your actual market transaction value. It effectively deflates the tariff rate you pay. And doing this saves major U.S. importers billions of dollars every single year.
And I assume the federal government has finally caught on to this missing revenue.
They have. There is currently a very quiet but fast-moving bipartisan bill going through Congress right now to explicitly ban this practice. They want to permanently close the loophole.
What actually happens to the market if they do close it?
Instant, massive inflation. or a catastrophic margin shock for retailers. If you are a massive big box retailer like Walmart or Target or a major furniture importer, your federal duty bill just jumped by 30 to 40% overnight.
Which means they either eat that massive cost and their stock price tanks, or they pass it directly to the consumer and retail prices spike.
Exactly. And the only people who are genuinely happy about this impending chaos are
Well, let me guess. The trade lawyers.
the trade lawyers. The intelligence report explicitly notes that international trade law is the new boom industry. If this first sale rule officially changes, literally every major supply chain in the world has to be legally and physically re-engineered.
It's always the lawyers who win in the end.
Always the lawyers.
All right, let's take a deep breath. We looked at the crumbling electrical grid, the predator investors hoarding cash, the ski-town coups, the AI defense wars. Let's finally look at something that might actually save us, or at least save our physical lives. We're moving into the frontier science section of the stack.
This is truly the aha moment of the entire episode for me. We have 2 peer-reviewed papers here on Alzheimer's and pancreatic cancer that fundamentally, completely changed the map of human biology.
Let's start with the Alzheimer's paper. This is a disease that hits incredibly close to home for millions of people. And the mainstream narrative for decades, what every doctor tells you, has been that it's strictly a brain disease. It's amyloid plaque. It's tangles. And we have to invent a drug to scrub the brain clean.
And that specific approach has failed over and over and over again. Pharmaceutical companies have burned billions of dollars on drugs that simply don't work or have horrific side effects. But this new paper, and the title is very dense, it's called CD8, plus T cells are primed by CDC1 and exacerbate tau-mediated neurodegeneration.
Please translate that title for us.
Okay, so it offers a completely different theory, the inside-out theory. CD8 plus T cells are essentially the killer cells of your own immune system. They are the frontline soldiers. What this paper definitively found is that in Alzheimer's patients, these immune soldiers are getting primed, meaning they are getting activated and given a target outside of the brain entirely. They are getting activated in the body.
So the immune system gets angry somewhere else in the body first.
Yes. The researchers aren't exactly sure what the initial trigger is yet. Maybe it's a severe gut infection, maybe it's chronic systemic inflammation. But these T cells get radicalized out in the suburbs, so to speak, and then once they are armed, they travel to the city, they physically cross the blood-brain barrier, which is usually an impenetrable wall, and they aggressively invade the brain tissue.
And once they're in the brain, they start breaking things.
They actively attack the healthy neurons. They are the ones actually driving the neurodegeneration that we call Alzheimer's.
Okay, why is this considered good news? Because having immune soldiers invading your brain sounds objectively terrible.
It's amazing news because of access. Treating the human brain is a pharmacological nightmare. The blood-brain barrier is designed to keep everything out, including helpful drugs. It's a biological fortress. But if the T cells are actually being activated in the body...
Oh, I see. We can intercept them in the bloodstream.
Exactly. We can treat the immune system while it's still in the blood. We can medically calm down those soldiers before they ever march on the Capitol. It opens up a massive, entirely new avenue for treatment that doesn't require drilling into the skull or trying to molecularly trick the blood-brain barrier.
That is an incredible paradigm shift. It means it's not just a brain problem, it's a whole body immune problem.
And that exact systemic thinking directly mirrors the massive breakthrough we found in the paper on pancreatic cancer.
Right, this one is about wasting. The medical term is cachexia.
Right. When you see a late-stage cancer patient, they almost always look skeletal. They physically waste away. And for a century, oncologists thought, well, the tumor is a rapidly growing parasite. It's just aggressively stealing all the patient's calories to grow.
Which logically makes sense. A growing tumor needs massive energy.
It makes sense, but this new paper proves it is fundamentally wrong. The wasting isn't theft by the tumor, it's actually secondary organ failure. The pancreatic tumor chemically signals the rest of the pancreas to just stop working, and the pancreas is what produces all the vital enzymes that digest your food.
So if the pancreas stops producing enzymes,
you completely stop absorbing nutrition. A patient can eat a massive steak, but it essentially passes right through them unprocessed. You aren't getting the protein. So your body, which is desperate for basic amino acids just to keep your heart beating, starts aggressively breaking down your own skeletal muscles to survive.
You are literally cannibalizing yourself.
Yes, but here is the incredibly simple, elegant fix they discovered. The scientists found that if you simply give the cancer patient over-the-counter enzyme replacements, literally pills that do the digestion for you or specific amino acid supplements, the muscle wasting completely stops.
Okay, but what about the tumor itself? Does it keep growing?
This is the crazy part. The tumor actually slows down. Because it turns out the tumor was primarily feeding on the rich breakdown products of your dissolving muscles. By artificially saving the muscle mass with enzymes, you accidentally starve the cancer.
That completely reframes the entire philosophy of cancer treatment.
Yeah.
You don't just nuke the tumor with chemo, you mechanically support the failing organ.
It's totally holistic. It's treating the complex patient as an interconnected system rather than just a battlefield to drop bombs on.
I absolutely love that. It's the triangulated reality applied to biology.
Exactly.
And finally, just briefly, let's talk about the energy science. Geothermal. We have a company mentioned in the stack called Ever.
Ever. This is essentially geothermal 2.0.
Because geothermal 1.0 is basically just Iceland, right? You need literal volcanoes.
Right. 1.0 requires you to find a natural, bubbling hot spring underground. You need to be incredibly lucky with your local geography. Ever is completely different. It's a closed-loop system. You have to think of it like a giant subterranean radiator buried miles underground.
How does a buried radiator generate power?
They drill 2 very deep holes down into the bedrock. Then they drill horizontally to connect them at the bottom, creating a massive loop. They circulate a proprietary fluid through it. The fluid goes down freezing cold. The ambient, natural heat of the Earth's core, which is everywhere if you drill deep enough, superheats the fluid. It comes rushing up the other side, boiling hot, and the steam spins a massive electrical turbine.
Wait, is this fracking? Does it cause earthquakes?
No fracking at all. 0 water usage from local aquifers, no toxic chemicals injected, and absolutely 0 earthquake risk because they aren't shattering the rock, they are just running a pipe through it. And the best part, unlike solar or wind, which need perfect weather, this runs 24/7.
It provides the base load.
It's the absolute holy grail of green energy. And this isn't theoretical. They just successfully launched a fully operational commercial plant in Germany. If this technology scales globally, the extreme fragility of the power grid we talked about at the very start of the show, this completely fixes it.
Wow. It really all comes full circle, doesn't it?
It always does when you look deep enough.
So zooming out, we've covered a truly massive amount of ground today. We have the physical grid breaking under the immense weight of AI demand. We have Berkshire Hathaway hoarding unprecedented cash because they see the cracks forming in the global system. We have everyday people fighting desperately for authenticity in ski towns and drive-through coffee shops. And we have frontier science finally looking outside the brain to cure the brain.
It's a huge amount of data to take in all at once.
If you had to synthesize all of these separate threads into one core takeaway for the listener right now, what is it?
I think it boils down to the fundamental tension between control and chaos.
Control and chaos.
Yeah. Look at the response to all this fragility. From the Pentagon, from Greg Abel at Berkshire, their immediate response is extreme control. Lock the system down. Hoard the cash. Pick the military winners.
Right.
But the response from regular people, from the skiers in Telluride, from the Gen Z kids at Dutch Bros, their response is authenticity. They want to actively embrace a little bit of chaos as long as it means it's real.
And the science.
And the response from the scientific breakthroughs is connection. Finally realizing that the brain connects directly to the body and that the failing organ connects to the tumor.
We were finally moving away from these overly simple, isolated narratives into acknowledging how complex these systems really are.
Exactly. But I do want to leave you with one final, very provocative thought. A bit of a ghost story for the financial markets to end on.
Oh, I like ghost stories. Let's hear it.
So we spent a lot of time today talking about OpenAI essentially becoming a massive defense contractor. We talked about them potentially becoming the most important, highly valued company in the world.
Right.
But I want you to remember the Hershey company for a second.
The chocolate guys in Pennsylvania.
Yes, the chocolate company. So Hershey is uniquely controlled by a massive charitable trust. Years ago, the board of that trust actually wanted to sell the entire company to a conglomerate. It would have made an absolute fortune for all the shareholders. It was the perfectly rational, Wall Street-approved market move.
Okay, so why did they sell?
Because the local Pennsylvania Attorney General stepped in and legally blocked the sale.
On what grounds?
Because the trust's original foundational mission was to support a local school for orphans. And the Attorney General argued that selling the company to an outsider would irreparably hurt the local community. The strict public interest legally overrode the basic concept of shareholder value.
Okay, that's fascinating history, but how does that connect to AI?
OpenAI is currently governed by a nonprofit board. Their explicitly stated foundational mission is to achieve safe, AGI artificial general intelligence. Their mission is definitively not to maximize shareholder value.
Oh, I see where this is going.
What happens when we inevitably hit the Hershey moment for artificial intelligence?
Wow.
What happens if OpenAI successfully builds a model that is so incredibly powerful, the nonprofit board decides it is simply too dangerous to ever release to the public, or too dangerous to properly monetize?
What if the single most valuable, highly anticipated company in the history of global capitalism simply decides not to make money?
Exactly. That would instantly crash the tech market. The entire market right now is blindly pricing in infinite unencumbered growth. Wall Street universally assumes that human greed is a permanent constant.
But with AI safety or national security fear might actually be the stronger emotion.
Precisely. We might see a truly unprecedented situation where national security directives or pure existential safety concerns completely block the realization of trillions of dollars of expected value, just like the Pennsylvania Attorney General blocked the lucrative sale of a chocolate factory.
The ultimate fragility,
Right.
the most valuable asset in the world that you simply aren't allowed to touch.
It is a massive systemic risk that exactly 0% of the market is currently pricing in.
Well, on that incredibly happy existential note, keep your eyes on the power grid, definitely keep your powder dry like Abel, and maybe go buy a weird sugary energy drink from a real human being today.
Stay authentic out there.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll see you tomorrow.